Hi, in this video we're going to look at web development tools, so in other words things that we can use to make websites and enhance websites. Because first of all, just to make you aware, I have got various different applications running at the same time, so if my computer, which isn't the most powerful one that you can get, does stall a little bit, then I do apologise, but I did kind of want to show you as much as possible the types of things that I'm going to be talking about within this PowerPoint. So we're going to be looking at web development tools, and the first thing we're going to look at is Sublime Text. And Sublime Text is a small program that you can download to your computer. It runs very simply. It's a slightly more advanced text editor, and it's very popular among web developers, and it obviously provides support for the creation of HTML code alongside things like CSS. It is, as I said, extremely popular. It's free, and it does a lot of nice things. Now, one of the things to bear in mind with your Sublime Text, I'll try and find it here. Here it is. So this is what Sublime Text looks like. Is that there is no preview here, but you can do various different things within it. It will help you structure your web pages, and it's quite a nice bit of kit. And I say it's quite popular with web developers. So going back to the slideshow, I've got Bootstrap here. Now, Bootstrap is a framework that web developers used to help lay out web pages. So in the past, a little while ago, web developers used to use things like tables to help lay out web pages. That was when this sort of technologies, I'm referring to Bootstrap here, among others, didn't exist. So tables would have been quite a good option to help lay out web pages alongside things like frames. Now, both of those things are pretty archaic these days, so don't use them. But Bootstrap is a framework that isn't amazingly dissimilar to tables in that it's still laid out in a grid. But the idea is that it can be resized, it can be laid out for different sizes of browser, and it's meant to be responsive depending on the type of browser you are coding in and viewing your web pages on. So for example, you can see the image here is a variety of different rows, each with a variety of different columns. Now each one of these could be a layout that you would use within Bootstrap, and what would happen, you wouldn't use a variety of different of these columns like this picture is showing. You'd select one of them and then you'd manipulate it from there, and what would happen is that your browser, it would detect what size your browser is, and then it would resize the columns based on that. And the idea is that it will change based on your viewer's browser, so that you can budget for it and you can really make the site appear its best at all times. Now, Bootstrap does need a fair level of web compliance. I'll get the right word in the end. Competence. In order to use this effectively, because all of the Bootstrap code is within web files, whether it be CSS or JavaScript. It's not a HTML file, and therefore you do need to kind of know what each one of it does. However, ultimately it's still quite a nice way to help lay out your web pages. It's quite popular, although not as popular, I would say, I don't have any stats to back it up, as the next thing we're going to look at, which is WordPress. So WordPress is a content management system, CMS, which allows you to create websites which can be managed easily. So if you think about a variety of different things that you use, when we talk about content management systems, it's basically somewhere that you can go that will manage all of the pages and all of the content within your website. You can lay it out, you can edit it, etc. And it's basically something that will help you do that. So it's quite a nice bit of kit. It's free. However, a user could potentially pay more for things like hosting, domain names, and so on. So domain names especially will be very important, because ultimately you need the end user to be able to recognize your website and get to it nice and quickly, and be able to remember it over and over and over again. So you don't want them forgetting what your website's called. That's bad. They're not going to come back to you if they can't remember what your website is called. Commonly used on things like blog websites, because WordPress includes things like posts, and they generally appear in a sequential type format. But there are other things that you can do depending on the theme that you use. It's a very popular CMS. Now I've got open here the Bootstrap. Not Bootstraps, because we did Bootstrap in the last slide. This is where you can go to get Bootstrap, getbootstrap.com. Sorry, I meant to show you it on the last slide, and must have got waylaid. This is where you get your WordPress from. So now, bear in mind that WordPress is a content management system that you can download, and there's lots of different sites out there, and you won't have any issues finding one if you want to see an example of it. As you can see, the free version of Bootstrap here. So you can get a nice free site up and running quite quickly. But any one of these, that's this is nothing for any type of business, any type of web developer. These prices are inconsequential, really. £20 per month is people spend that much on takeaways. It's not a lot of money, and all this stuff you get with it. This is and unbelievably helpful, really. These SEO tools here, that's me search engine optimization tools. So in other words, they'll help people find your website on search engines, Google Analytics. You get to remove things like the branding. So what you don't want is WordPress logos everywhere. It's really kind of really quite cool, really. I would recommend, obviously, if you are vaguely interested in developing websites, WordPress is a really good thing to have a look at. Let's get back to the PowerPoint. So Dreamweaver is a WYSIWYG editor, so it allows a user to create web pages. And it's probably the most common website creator editor, but it is expensive. It's also largely responsible for my computer running quite slowly at this exact point in time, because it is a very memory intensive program, and my computer isn't designed really to be a gaming machine or anything like that. So the point here is that in order to run this effectively, you're going to need quite a decent machine. Dreamweaver can produce large amounts of unnecessary code if the design view is used, and then you start. You can drag and drop in Dreamweaver, but it is not advised, really. Because it just creates all this extra stuff, this code that you don't need, and actually it's not particularly great. Let's have a look at Dreamweaver. Now, this is the very latest version of Dreamweaver. I'm fortunate enough to, as a teacher, get it slightly discounted, but I couldn't actually tell you exactly how much Adobe are charging for Dreamweaver right now if you're not a teacher or in education, but I suspect you're probably paying somewhere between £20 and £30 a month for Dreamweaver alone, and that's before you. Most people that have Dreamweaver would actually purchase the Adobe suite, because you would have all sorts of extra things that you can do. So you could have Photoshop, Illustrator, and so on. So it just kind of makes sense to do that. But as you can see here with Dreamweaver, straight away you've got color coding in your code. So this is HTML code here. It might be a little bit small if you're doing this on a mobile phone, but I'm not actually trying to teach you the HTML right now. I'm just trying to show you what the code looks like in Dreamweaver. You've got your 3 different views up here. So the split view will show half and half. Okay, so this is in theory what your web page will look like, and this is the code down here. It's semi-helpful. I mean, ultimately, people will get dragged just too frequently to edit this bit, because in theory the design view is easier, but actually in the long run it's not easier, and it will create problems and headaches for you further down the road if you just continue to use the design view, because you've got to remember this is not what it looks like. This is not what it looks like in a browser. It's trying to replicate it, but it isn't what it looks like in a browser. And you've got the live view, which is basically just, in theory, the whole page. Now, again, I'll repeat what I just said in the last slide. This is trying to mimic what it will look like in the browser, but until you open it in the browser, you simply don't know. Okay, and you need to be trying it out. You need to be previewing it in browser, not just Chrome. Okay, you got to anticipate and respect the fact that different people will use all kinds of different browsers. You may agree or disagree, it doesn't matter. Okay, you need to respect the fact that other people, your potential customer base, will be using a wide variety of different browsers, period, and therefore you need to test it in different browsers. Whether or not you agree or disagree is by the by. Ultimately, what you use is your decision. What other people use is their decision. Dreamweaver does have a tendency to make web developers lazy. Okay, so for example, if you're using AP divs or tables, so AP divs stand for absolute positioning div. Now that means it's going to be in a specific spot on the website every time you load it, which sounds wonderful, but actually isn't good, because you got to remember, as I've tried to allude to previously, if your browsers are in different sized screens, or you resize the browser and this thing is in the same place every time you load it, that's going to create headaches for you long term. The browsers are in so many different shapes and formats these days that you just can't rely on that. That's just bad programming. And tables, I kind of alluded to tables earlier on. Tables are something to be avoided these days. Web developers usually use just standard divs that we can align or float to one side of the page and do various different things. It's not particularly difficult to lay out a web page these days, so there's no real need to use a table. And one of the bad things about tables, probably one of the worst things about tables, is that the search engine, i.e. something like Google, will struggle to find the keywords within your website when you use tables, and that means that if somebody puts a search into the search engine for it, they will struggle to find it. And if people can't find your site, they won't visit your site. It's that straightforward, really. Notepad++, so similar to Sublime Text. So it is technically more difficult because there is no design view. However, actually, once you know a bit of the code, then it shouldn't be too bad. It is similar to Sublime Text. There's a range of different people that use different versions of these, but ultimately it comes down to your personal preferences. When code is color coded, like it is in Notepad++, it will make it easier for you to spot mistakes, which is a good thing. Again, like Sublime Text, Notepad++ is free, small bit of software, and it can run on all, if not most, machines. So again, I have Notepad++ open. Now this is massive because I've used this already with my students this year and I wanted them to be able to see it. So you can change the size of the font here and style of the font, I believe. And you can see, it's the same code that I used in Dreamweaver, same code that I used in Sublime Text, and you can see it's relatively nicely color coded. It's not quite as nice as Dreamweaver. If I go back into Dreamweaver, I will just kind of show you the types of things that we get. So if I start typing, it's going to give me a drop down list, which is quite nice. And I can't remember if you get that. Let's try this. Okay, well, you get some kind of drop down list here. It's reasonably helpful, but it's not quite as nice as Dreamweaver's. Again, it's free, so quite useful. And the final one is Chrome Development Tools. So the good thing here is that it's already included within Chrome. If you have a Chrome download, can be useful for debugging code. Now, obviously, the downside is you need to know what code you're looking for when you are debugging. You might be able to find something that's wrong, but you need to understand the code in order to be able to do something with it. You can actually change the code within Chrome, which is quite nice. So you can actually see what impact, if you make certain changes, you will have on the final product. But while you can preview these changes on a mobile phone emulator, I believe there may even be some tablet choices on there, you can't actually preview it in other web browsers, which is a downside, I would say, because actually Chrome, while being the most popular browser, is not so popular that no other websites are not used. Chrome is the last time I checked at about 45% usage, so there's still 55% of people that aren't using Chrome. Now, you may need to check that figure up. It's been a little while since I looked it up, but the bottom line is that enough people don't use Chrome for you not to be just going, oh, it looks in Chrome, therefore it's okay. It looks okay in Chrome, therefore it's okay. You need to be developing websites for every browser. Okay, well, again, thank you very much for watching this. Now, I would like to just also stress that this is not an exhaustive list, okay? There are lots of other development tools out there that you can look at, that you can choose. A lot of it is down to personal preference. There are other web editors out there, such as Standard Notepad, for example, or you can use HTMLKit or Coffee Cup or even Visual Studio, and the best way to actually find out which one is good for you is to try them. Ultimately, what is good for one isn't necessarily the best for someone else, and everybody works different and more effectively in different environments. So, don't just kind of take it as read that because I've covered Notepad++, Sublime Text, Dreamweaver, that those are the free and only free web developers out there. That wouldn't be true. There's lots of different stuff that you can make websites in and try them out. And different technologies will constantly be coming in. So things that I haven't touched on, things like jQuery, things like React.js, all of this new stuff coming out. Have a look at it by all means. But again, thank you very much for watching, and I will hope to see you soon.